Hello.
Ed, we can hear you. We just haven't quite started yet.
Oh, all right.
How'd it go, Ed?
Oh, it was unbelievable. I'm exhausted. Can't hear you, Jeremy.
I could just say.
All right. Welcome to the June 16th meeting of the Warrant Committee. We have a few items on our agenda this evening. We are awaiting one of our members, but we have quorum. So we'll commence with talking about the financial matters on the agenda, but let's introduce the folks that are participating remotely. Please state your name and that you're participating remotely. With Sharon.
Sharon Tatro, participating remotely.
Amanda.
Amanda Hall, participating remotely.
Ed Vizala, participating remotely.
Great. And we have 4 of us here in the room. On our agenda this evening, we have a discussion on Article 1 of the special town meeting, the land disposition agreement, and the potential vote on Article 1. And we also have some end of fiscal year approvals to discuss. So while we're waiting for one of our members to join, we'll get into the end of the fiscal year approvals, which have been distributed previously, but we have for consideration, we have 9 reserve fund transfers that in total aggregate $1,560.28. The current reserve fund balance is $137,000. There was a summary distributed earlier Summarizing the reserve fund transfers, there were two, if the board recall, or the committee recalls, that we've approved previously for $13,000. And now we have 9 requests in front of us. Someone like to give us a summary of them, or?
Chief Carrico is here. Do you want to have him
Sure.
do
You
his
can come
first?
up and come up. You can go on Zoom and talk.
Welcome, Chief. Welcome, Chief.
Hey, good
How are you?
evening. How you guys doing?
Well, thanks. Thanks for joining us. You know, there's a few reserve fund transfers that are related to the fire department, and also you have a request to increase the spending limit of the ALS revolving fund. So if you'd like to give us a little color on those, we'd appreciate it.
Okay, typically when I do my budget, every time that I do a payroll, every time I do a warrant submitted, I have a cost to complete formula that I follow, and that gives me what my percentage to finish the year is. As we got deeper and deeper into the fiscal year, I should have had enough money to finish the year. Back about March 26th, I started tracking an excessive amount of sick time that came in due to COVID, as well as having a bunch of firefighters that wanted to take time off at the same time. So I ended up getting into a little trouble at the end of the fiscal year with my salaries. I had one firefighter in particular that had hand surgery, and he was out for 11 shifts. So it was 11 24-hour shifts that he was out. That was, obviously it was an excused absence because it was sick time and he had a doctor's. But I didn't foresee it. If I didn't have some of these overwhelming things happen, I probably would have finished the year fine. But originally I had put in for $29,000 that I needed to finish the year. This week, particularly this morning, I went through the budget sheets that the accounting gives me, and then I cross-compared it to my accounting. And I'm actually only going to need $10,000 in salary transfer, not $29,000. We will definitely be fine for the last year. There's not a lot of overtime in this last 2 weeks. So we're looking good, not a lot of time off. So things have kind of stabilized. Everybody's back to work. And there is not a lot of vacation time on the books in the next couple of days. So we're good. As far as
Is that the
salary,
numbers that are reflected in what was sent us, the 29?
So so the salaries would be paid out of the ALS revolving fund as opposed to being a reserve fund transfer. So we had, as the chief indicated, we thought it was going to be a higher number, but now it'll be a lower number that we're going to end up needing from that revolving fund.
So we're just asking for the Board of Selectmen approved on Tuesday an increase to that expenditure limits. Now we're looking for an increase for more.
Of 25,000 increase, okay.
and as far as the expense line, right now I have about $6,000 left. We switched over to using the Foxborough motor pool for doing our maintenance because the cost labor is about half of where I would go if I went to Minuteman or if I went to Greenwood for fire apparatus repairs. I'm being told that Squad 4 is still being worked on. Hale Pump has back ordered the impeller and the impeller shaft, and I'm looking at about $7,500 to $8,500 in repair. So obviously the amount of money that I have left in the budget, I'm not going to be able to cover it. So that's why I was looking for money in the expense side too. That's all I really have.
Okay. So you have a request for increase of the revolving from the ALS revolving fund of $25,000 and a reserve fund transfer in the amount of $9,000. Any questions from the committee?
So when you mentioned that drawing down on the, let me understand that, drawing down on the
ALS revolving fund.
fund, as opposed to the,
Nope, the 9,000 will come from the reserve fund
okay,
for the repairs, but then the overage in salaries will come with the additional ALS.
all right, that's clarified, thank you.
Anybody online have a question?
I'm good.
I'm good.
And can I just say something just for the record? I think this is the first time I've came in with a reserve fund transfer request in 4 years. So it kind of makes me a little upset that I had to do it. I usually am on target and, I try to follow it right to the letter and I use the money I'm given and it does bother me. I like to make it work with what I have, so.
All right, Chief, we understand.
Forgiven.
We're gonna watch it really closely.
I know, you're on the radar.
This is a fire drill.
Do we need to vote these individually or can we vote them?
I think you vote them all at once at the end if you'd like.
Let's do it that way. If we don't have any more questions for the chief, we can let him go. Thanks, Chief.
Hey, thank you guys. Have a great night.
Thanks, Chief.
Anyone else to speak to any of these?
No, I think it's just us speaking to all of them. So,
Okay.
so let me start. So this evening, I'm before you asking for a $10,000 reserve fund transfer for legal bills. We have had higher than anticipated costs for legal services. We've had the Hinkley South appeal. We had both collective bargaining for police and fire. And as you know, we have an internal investigation going on at the police department. So I'm asking for $10,000 to cover what the bills I have in hand now, but I will be in front of you again before July 15th, once those finalized bills have come in. So this is just the first in two steps for that. Moving on to fire. As you all know, Joy is retiring in the town accountant's office. So we have brought back the part-time vendor person, and we had to rehire and do some training before Joy leaves the office. So there's a small $382 request for the reserve fund there. In the inspections department, we've had a higher number of inspections than we anticipated. As you know, our inspectors are paid on a per inspection fee. So we're looking for a $9,000 transfer for that. The town sealer would like $23.20.
No.
When we get to open.
I'm not speaking to that. I am pleased to report that that $23 covers inspection stickers for 3 years. So hopefully he won't be back again next year, but we'll keep an eye on him as well. Election
I'm gonna
workers
make a note of that.
Election workers, obviously we're looking for a transfer for the town clerk, and that's $1,988, and that's related to having the special town meeting in the fall. We're looking for salaries for overtime, which we don't typically budget in the treasurer's office, but there's been some additional work in that office. We're looking for $167 transfer for that. And we need, I just want everybody to sit down before I ask for it, 8 cents for OPEB.
For what?
I need 8-cent transfer.
No rounding.
Can we just?
I know, right?
I think I got a
It
quarter.
costs more for me to print this for you than that. So, yes, there was a rounding error in the accountant's office.
A couple of cans in or so.
You think, I'm sorry, in the treasurer's office, you think Chief Carrot goes mad about it? Just talk to Jordan, so. Anyway, and then, as you know, we come in usually for an annual request for our Medicare reimbursement Medicare payment, and that's mainly due to the lump sum payment for the teachers. We don't anticipate that we'll need the full 10,000, so if we don't need it, obviously it'll stay within the reserve fund. And that's what we're looking for this evening.
And we have another one of our members just joined. Jill, welcome. If you could state your name and that you're participating remotely.
Hey everyone, this is Jill Rafter participating remotely.
Welcome.
Hi, Jill.
Any questions on, we're discussing the reserve fund transfers, Jill? We just got a presentation on the 9 transfers and the 1 revolving fund limit increase. We've yet to vote on these, but I'd like to open up the committee for questions on any of the reserve fund transfers that we just discussed. I have one question as far as the inspections. Does that mean we're getting some more revenue from inspections?
Yeah.
For the higher than
That's,
anticipated.
can be related to the Aura development.
Any questions?
Yeah, could you just refresh me on the, so we had the reserve balance of 137, and then now we're drawing it down, it's at 83,440.
Mhm.
Is that significant in terms of your planning and management, or this is precisely why we had that?
This is why we have it for unintended, and it, we didn't anticipate these expenses coming through. So I think this is more than we used last year. I don't remember off the top of my head what the number was we used last year. I have to go back to my warrant report, but yeah, unanticipated.
And as far as any others on the horizon, just you mentioned the legal fees.
Right now, the legal fees is the next one will come in.
And so the remaining 83,440 from your foreseeable
Mhm.
is sufficient?
Yes.
The last pay period is next week, so all the salaries should be all set. Those are sufficiently budgeted. Unanticipated stuff that comes up is very likely in the next week on the operating side, but it's definitely, it could happen, but we went through it today and we don't
Yeah.
see much.
And we're trying to keep everybody to, appropriations within their budget versus hitting the reserve fund if possible. That's why we came to you for the increase for the ALS revolving fund rather than going to.
You had mentioned, I think, that this is reflective of a change in accounting. In the past, this would have gone to.
So in the past, you couldn't do transfers within a budget, so you couldn't move treasurer salaries to treasurer operations. Then they changed it and you could use a maximum of 3%. You could transfer between the line items in the budget, and then Municipal Modernization Act in 2017 allows you to do that without the percentage cap on it. But yes, prior to that, you would have had it.
Any other questions? And entertain a motion or motions. I don't know, maybe one for each.
I think you can do one motion for all the reserve funds as presented tonight, and then an increase in the.
Motion.
So moved.
Second. All right. Positive motion on the floor for the approval of the reserve fund transfers as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Then I'll go
Aye.
around. Ed,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Amanda,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
those pass. And then a second vote for the increase of the ALS revolving fund by 25,000.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Amanda?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
All right, that motion carries. So we've dispensed with those items. Let's move back in our agenda to the heart of our agenda, discussing the Medfield State Hospital redevelopment, land use agreement, and Article 1 of the special town meeting. So we do have some guests here in the audience that are available for questions. All of us has had a chance to now read the LDA itself. From our conversations, we had some conversations with town council at our last meeting as well, that representing the town as far as negotiating the LDA. There's been a wealth of information presented and distributed. I think we've received an updated fiscal impact analysis that's incorporated the latest cost from the Public Works Department. So that is also available, supplementing all the information. And I guess before us is a continued conversation and discussion and opportunity for any questions that you still may have. So with that, I'll open it up to the committee for questions. Pull up anybody we'd like to ask them to.
I don't have any questions on the LDA. I've been through it twice now. I think the one issue I raised last week around payment to Medfield, Town of Medfield School Committee. It's been changed to Town of Medfield School Department. So accuse the school committee of taking it right. But so it's yeah, we changed to and you know, I would just, you know, in my opinion, congratulate you guys for a great deal. Excellent document. I think it covers the town's risk very well. I think that there's all sorts of provisions in here that I was interested in how they're going to get dealt with, and after reading this, I felt a lot better. I think the fact that the language around hazardous materials, sort of the release language there is very strong. We all know about the details of the financial side of this, so. So I was pleased with working. I don't know if anyone else has a question.
I don't have a question, but we don't often have the opportunity to have one of the selectmen before the hour.
That's a good thing.
No, but I would echo Steve's comments in terms of we've had a great opportunity to speak with Todd and with the team from Trinity. And so I don't have specific questions. I would echo as well the you know, to Nick and to the whole team, the negotiation and the development. I know it's a challenge, but you know, to your credit, having this level of documentation prior to a town meeting, my biggest concern leading up to this was that there would be ambiguity in a land development agreement. Primarily because I didn't know what a land development agreement was before this started. So I guess, Gus, what I would appreciate is if you could just kind of give your perspective of how this is developed, and I know the selectmen, before we make the change in name, you know, voted to support this, but your perspective, because so much of the transaction leading up to this product, which I again say is a terrific product from my perspective, was done in executive session. So I'm sure that we benefit from not seeing how this sausage was made, but if you could give some insight into why you are strongly supportive of the project.
Sure. I might suggest you guys sit at the owl table.
This is the
Yeah,
You should feel free to join in on this. I'm the one who's broad, conceptual, and not necessarily technically accurate person here. So every time when I get something wrong, either folks from Trinity can correct me or tag me correct.
You see, after texting, it's not a good sign.
Yeah, so at a really big picture level, the town took 4 years to basically ask the townspeople what they wanted. I actually wanted to see that wrapped up faster, but it took 4 years, and we spent a lot of time to do it. When we bought the property, we said we wanted to buy it because we wanted to control our destiny. And I am very comfortable saying on Tuesday night, when people come together, they will in fact be in control of their destiny. It's a fork in the road. It's not like, oh, it's a, you know, there's no do-overs, I don't think, on the path we're going. It's a fork in the road. People should understand that. From the process standpoint, after the master plan had been produced, I guess I'm a skeptic throughout this whole thing that we're going to have problems that we didn't have. I was concerned that there had been so much of asking people what they wanted that in proportion to the hard-nosed questions about, is this going to work? Is the market going to respond? I was worried that we were going to get negative pushback from the actual developers. You guys are nuts. You know, you got to change this, you got to change that. And in that first year, we didn't get that. we basically got feedback from a number of developers that said, no, this looks like something to work with. So that I was happy with. In looking for, initially looking for proposals, I think we certainly broadcast the package to a lot of people. I anticipated that we would have multiple proposals. Didn't anticipate that we sort of had one proposal that was what we had in mind, and another proposal, and if anyone from Pulte is listening, forgive me for what I'm about to say, because I don't mean it literally. But there was one proposal that was the deal with the devil. Now, I'm not commenting about the company. I'm saying that was the option. If all we wanted to do was figure out how we could maximize how much money we could extract from that property, that was kind of the acid test for me. So I'm not commenting on the company. I actually am grateful that they did what they did. And it's that it basically said, we're going to test what you really meant what you said in the master plan. And I was happy to see what came out of that was the town. I do think there was a very strong groundswell of feedback from people, from official committees, but also from general members of the public that said, that's not what we want. We want what Trinity has offered. That's the thing that we want. So that kind of made me feel like we have done a good job of steering this project in the direction that the town has asked it to be steered as a result of 4 years of conversations that led to the master plan. I think the votes that we've had since then, the vote on the zoning, for me, was a confirmation that the town really felt that way. Certainly the general acceptance of our selection of Trinity as the preferred developer was further confirmation, although that wasn't exactly a vote. So I think that first the master planning committee and now the past 3 years, the development committee have done our best to deliver the thing we believe the town has asked for. And obviously there's, people want to know where's the restaurant, where's the store, and it's, at that level, it's like, that's where developers have to make their decisions, and they make the economic decisions that make the most sense. So I just think that's not a good reason to say this whole thing should be disqualified. With two Trinity people, now that I've made a potentially insulting comment about Pulte, which I did not make. I was just making a comment. I will observe, as I observed last Thursday, when the master plan committee was first here in doing the work in the first 4 years, toward the end of that discussion, there was a lot of talk about, well, what we really want is a partner. So we want a developer who will work in partnership with us. And if I were to put myself in the developer's shoes, I would say, well, I want to know how you're defining partner, because I don't know that we actually want you with one hand on our steering wheel. And I don't think it's reasonable to expect that kind of partnership. My impression so far in all of the dealings we've had with Trinity, to include the difficult ones to finalize the LDA, which I didn't necessarily see all the sparks and smoke, but the general process, I think Trinity is probably as close as we could reasonably expect to get to a developer who is committed to working, if not in partnership, the way the master planning committee was talking about it, in a responsive relationship that I'm confident they'll do the best that they can within their capabilities to accommodate or to respond or to get us what we're asking for. So I'm very positive about what this opportunity represents for the town. Tuesday, the vote says, no, sorry, we changed our minds, then we'll deal with that. But my view of this is that it's been very well run. Speaking personally, I've learned, I didn't come into the development committee certainly knowing anything at all about real estate development on the scale that we're talking about here. So I've been grateful to be on the committee with people who do know what they're talking about, because I've actually learned a lot about real estate development. I think the reason that you see the completeness of the documentation is because Todd and Johnny and Chris all have the expertise to understand how that works. They know what the process was supposed to be. They orchestrated that process. Yeah, people wanted the LDA 2 months ahead of time so they could sleep on their pillow or something, sleep in it. But I think there's not very much that people could be asking about that they actually couldn't find answers to if they actually dug into the documents. Now, they'll still ask about them and we'll try to answer them along the way. But this is a pretty, in my opinion, pretty thoroughly prepared, vetted project.
You know, you mentioned the zoning, and that was my indoctrination as a member of the Warrant Committee. And I think the zoning passed by a very slim margin. And in my recollection, I checked all the boxes. But I know some of the concern, some people who didn't want to do anything. Some people who didn't recognize, couldn't identify the liability that stood there, and that's been addressed. And I think the what ifs relating to, well, who's going to handle the infrastructure. And so I think the thoroughness of that, addressing those issues, which were the high point issues that were raised in the zoning discussion, been a great job of doing that. The one item that came up in the conversation earlier that perhaps maybe you could address, or even Trinity, was apparently there's some back talk about an offer from the other, and we should be clear.
I can
Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so, I think Bob and I, we know a little bit about the details behind this because we've had conversations with Todd. You kind of addressed this question about the Arboretum at your last Trinity meeting. It's not really a Trinity question. It's more, I think the LDA is stands on its own. It's more of a question of what happens in that Arboretum. You made some judgments as a committee about some decisions about what you wanted to happen and why. And there was a dialogue at your last meeting. I thought it was a good dialogue, and I'm not sure everybody had a chance to hear that. And there's been some chatter, and concerned citizens about some people thinking that as a town, maybe we should have grabbed the brass ring and taken the Pulte offer to that parcel, that Arboretum parcel. And I think that, so I just thought it would be good, I understand and agree with the decisions that you guys made and certainly support them, but I'm not sure there's a full understanding of why you decided what you did and the judgments that so I thought maybe we could get a chance to explain that to everybody.
Sure. So I'll start, but if you want to add anything, you can. Let me start first. Now that I sat there and kind of did a backhanded slap at Pulte, let me make a different comment about Pulte. I think Pulte would still be interested in the property. And I think, Pulte as a company that does what it does the way it does it, buy the Boston Globe and open up the real estate section. And you can see what Pulte does. I think they're a top tier company doing what they do. And to their credit, I think they've given us enough of an indication that despite not winning the whole enchilada, they retain an interest and a willingness. And I think that's what a class organization does. And so from the standpoint of them, the fact that they have handled it that way, I think that's a classy move.
And as a Warrant Committee member for 4 years, the term devil is a term of endearment, I thought. So I think
The select would have some more extreme terms that are terms of endearment to be sometimes here. But leave that aside. So the Arboretum property, as I looked at it first, again, I don't have expertise in real estate development. The message that I took from the Master Planning Committee years from Kathy McCabe was the comment that she made that a lot of towns will make the mistake of selling the developable land that's on the road before they've fixed the thing that they have in the back. She said, if you fix the thing that's in the back and get that up and running, all of a sudden the value of that land that's more easily developed goes up. So I'm not an expert. I took that advice and I have clung to it all along. For those who think we should grab the brass ring right now, my response to that is, in my entire life, there have been small periods of time when the value of real estate has gone down. And all the rest of that time, like maybe 5 years out of 40, all the rest of that time, the value of real estate has gone up. So yes, we could grab a brass ring. Or, in my view, we could grab a silver or a gold ring when we actually have the true value of that property become apparent to everybody that might be interested. So from a crass mercenary financial standpoint, I think that land's going to be worth a lot more when we get this all done, just from a pure financial standpoint. The other point is, if we were to develop that property right now, we would probably be developing it, for lack of any better concept, we would be going to the master plan. And we would be kind of bound a little bit by the master plan. But there's things that we haven't done on the campus that were included in the master plan, and that some people are saying, what about this? What about that? I would much rather have us have that discussion about what we really want to do with the Arboretum. When everybody understands what's in place on the campus that Trinity is producing, they understand how CAM is unfolding, and they start to look at what that property, the Arboretum property, is offering in terms of the things they would like to see up there, as opposed to simply go back to what's now a 4-year-old or 3.5-year-old master plan. I think we'll be able to make a more intelligent decision about what to do with that property when this other stuff is done. There's one other reason for me that I just instinctively cringe from that. This project by Trinity is going to be an extremely complex project. We're going to have to figure out as a town how we at least do a responsible job of overseeing the project as the owner in a way that doesn't make things harder, but that nonetheless lets us see what's going on. I don't think it's a very good idea to then launch a second project right adjacent to that project, potentially or perhaps likely with a different developer, maybe not, potentially, and then have the town have to figure out how to manage 2 simultaneous projects at the same time. I just think that's, from a management standpoint, that's biting off more than we should be trying to chew. So in a nutshell, I think that explains why I would like to hold the Arboretum off financially, managerially, and in terms of getting the town what it really does want when we get to the point where we're ready to develop it.
You're not, some of the comments I read were like, the town does need, we've got a lot of needs in terms of other infrastructure needs, particularly mentioned with the school. But obviously, you're not opposed to making money off that parcel and helping the town out.
It's a whole. So I think, to maybe pick up on what you were saying, as a committee, we went out and people could submit proposals. They didn't have to be tailored to the master plan. They didn't have to be for the entire property. We wanted to understand from the development community what they were interested in and how it would work. But we did state in the RFP, if you're only taking one piece, help us understand how we're gonna deal with some of these other issues. So I think the problem with, Pulte option A, which was 74 townhomes, I think it was, in the Arboretum, is it still leaves us with, roughly 30 buildings and all this liability. So you couldn't just do that.
Right.
We're not.
I don't think anyone was suggesting that.
Well, we've heard some people suggest
really?
that. So,
Okay.
from the committee standpoint, it doesn't begin to deal with our biggest problem.
Yeah.
So once you move on from there, it's like, well, we got to ask questions even during the interview process, could you split up these proposals, and Trinity could do this and Pulte could do that. But, I think as time went on, we saw the value in just taking parcels out, the green and the Northfield, were also part of that RFP. Now, the zoning doesn't allow them to be developed. But the town was not categorically saying they couldn't be transferred, and there were many discussions about whether it was a hassle for the town to cut the grass, on the green, but I think over time and hearing feedback at our meetings, it kept coming back to the value that people put on open space in our town and feeling more comfortable if the town retained the green and the arboretum, the green and the north field. And then when you get to the arboretum, it really is, neither Pulte's proposal or Trinity's proposal included the arboretum, and it was 17 rentals, historic renovation. Pulte's was demolition and 74 townhomes. If you go back to the master plan just to see what people were thinking as part of that process, it was 24 townhomes, new construction. So we didn't really feel like we had something that spoke directly to, what the town had kind of put out there before. So, then you get back to, if the house next to yours is boarded up and falling down, is your house worth more when somebody comes in and buys that and does a, multi-million-dollar renovation? And maybe you should wait and kind of wait for that to happen, and then, whatever the town decides to do, the dirt will be worth more, right? If it's worth 7.5 million, if you want 74 townhomes with, as part of that campus that's unremediated, what is it worth? When that's addressed. And, people have also commented on Trinity's purchase price, the $2 million. It doesn't include the school payment, it doesn't include the remediation, it doesn't include the infrastructure, it also doesn't include the arboretum. So it's not really a $2 million.
It started out
sale.
including it, but
Yeah, and I think they really stepped up. I think they understood that, as a town, if we were removing acreage, that we weren't inviting a reduction in the sales price. And I think they figured out very competently and quickly how they could still do the number of units that they felt the town could accept, because it was within the range of the master plan, minus 1 unit in the core campus. So they're getting the 334 units that they had kind of built their numbers around without the arboretum, and they didn't come back to us and retrade the price.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I kind of understood all that, but I wanted everybody else to hear that. I mean, as I look back and think back, from where we started, like you were talking about it, Gus. I mean, we took a big leap of faith, when we bought this property, and even, up until approving the zoning, that we would be able to come together as a community, agree on what we wanted done, and then get a developer to do. I mean, that was a huge leap of faith. And so to be where we're at today is really a testament to it.
I think that's important because, we bought a property, the state sold the liability.
Right.
I mean, that's, and I think the reason I brought that up was because it was, kind of chance favors the prepared mind, and in anticipation of the meeting on Tuesday, if that question comes up, it's very helpful to have this, presentation.
Something that's been on my mind about this is that I am optimistic. I guess I could still say cautiously optimistic, because we're not approved yet and we're not moving into it. But I was sitting there thinking about other like state hospital properties. And of course, the first one that comes to mind is Foxborough. These large, obsolete properties that the state sells off, they're not easy for the towns that pick them up to actually get through this, and they're not easy for the developers to be able to get things done. So if you look at what happened in Foxborough, I think most people say it's good now, but there was a whole lot of financial and physical destruction that went into that. I am optimistic, and part of this is that I have some faith in Trinity here based on my early interactions with them. I am optimistic that we are going to be able to do as good a job in resurrecting an old obsolete state hospital property as has been done in this entire state. I actually think that's possible, and when it happens, Like if you go up there on Saturdays when Cam is doing stuff. And for me, it's always at the end of the event when people are drifting off in all directions. And that's the time I can see that entire campus being a vibrant, live neighborhood with this cultural and arts center inside it. That's also a magnet for the rest of town. I can see it then, what this could possibly be. All those architect drawings that were in the proposal, everybody knows, oh, those always look a lot better than what you're really going to get. I can get pretty close in my mind to those drawings. Maybe not all the sculptures exactly the way they are, but I can get pretty close to my mind to seeing that place becoming that kind of neighborhood. Who has a rental development that allows them that kind of a facility with that kind of spacing between buildings, close to a cultural and arts center, right on the Charles River, open space surrounding it with a kayak launch? And it's just,
Well, and you're talking about the leap of faith, and I think it's important also to, in zoning, but to go back to the initial decision on the part of the town to purchase the property and recognizing in retrospect what the drivers for that were, including massive loss of control of which is really pristine property. And we were going to lose control, then the state was going to build God knows what, right? So the idea that the ability to take on, to take it into ourselves, and candidly, it is a reflection of a lot of people in town, folks that we know who have been involved in this from the beginning, who saw the value of that property and did protect it and did the work for the environmental and gave the overlook. So, it's been it's not always the easiest thing, but that's what we sit up here, we deal with those things with, John, Bill, and, so many people who have made that property during this process, protected it, preserved it, gave the overlook, took care of the environmental issues, and made it a project that is economically attractive to a developer, but also a great step for the town. So I think, your point is, it's just, when you look back in the history, we have been very, fortunate. But it didn't come without a lot of work by a lot of people.
Right, and I will tell you, I was not, I got involved in the development committee. It was for and former selectman Mike Marcucci asked me to join. So 2018, but I lived in town since 1995, and I clearly remember that 2014 town meeting vote. And putting my hand up and voting yes, but as somebody who works in commercial real estate, thinking, what are we getting ourselves? And there was a lot of discussion at the meeting. I think it was definitely buyer beware. We can't just buy it and do nothing. There's all this liability and bad stuff up there that we're not even totally sure about because we didn't have the kind of access. But certainly there were older reports from DCAM and others. So maybe that piece of it has faded a little bit over the years in terms of awareness of that. Right? People have been enjoying the property, doing things that they never could have done up there in 2014. Right? And but in the back of your mind, you get one of these big windstorms, you get that mill fire that just happened. It's a good reminder of what we really thought. We got 127 beautiful acres and came with 30 or so highly contaminated buildings.
Ed, Sharon, Amanda, Jill, make sure you have an opportunity to make any comments or ask questions.
I'm all set.
Well, I'm fine. Well summarized. I couldn't agree anymore with that guy. Gus said it perfectly.
I agree. Yeah, no, I agree. And I really appreciate, Gus, you coming and kind of doing the summary for us tonight.
happy to do it.
Jill?
Yeah, I echo the same sentiments, so I totally agree.
Great. Any other comments, questions? We ready for a vote? The big decision?
Yes.
I think it's, in my opinion, it's a pretty easy decision. And all the information and the time that has gone into this, we're kind of, as a warrant committee, we're kind of coming in at the end of this, just doing some review, some little due diligence for town meeting, but all the hard work was done ahead of time for us and done very well, in my opinion. So thanks to all involved, the staff, the volunteers, the select board. I couldn't be happier with the proposal and the path, the choice that we have ahead of us at town meeting. So
No, I agree. The one thing I would say is that we've been very fortunate to date. You talked about economics and situations in the environment we're in right now. Having the opportunity that we have, I think it's even more important for us to act now because of the uncertainty that's going on in all the economic markets. That's just a further stake in the ground to say this is the time, this is the opportunity, let's go forward. So I agree with 100%.
great. So the motion would be to accept Article 1 as printed in the warrant.
So move. Second.
There's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Now I'll go around, starting with Ed,
Aye.
Sharon,
Aye.
Amanda,
Oh,
Bill.
Aye.
Great, unanimous. So, guess we could talk a little bit about town meeting itself. Do we need to schedule a meeting beforehand for any reason?
I think there is one schedule.
Is you have it up there?
Yeah,
Okay.
5 o'clock.
It's
For
the
5?
holiday Monday. Brittany reminded us all that needed to be posted today,
Okay.
so we do it just in case.
We may not have much to discuss. Maybe there's some fiscal year and
There
fiscal
might
year
be
stuff, but we're posted for 5.
Just probably need to.
The only thing I might suggest is, because I did this myself, I had to remind myself that the town meeting was at 6.
Yes.
Not 7. And
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people are thinking that, so there's a way to communicate that.
Yeah.
I was not.
6 6 p.m. High school. So, and we may have some meeting minutes ready for us as well next week. So that's, I think with that, I don't think there's anything else on our agenda that is all that pressing. If there's anything else the committee would like to talk about?
It's tip-off time.
I think we should pass to Sharon the motions for adjournment.
Why? Me?
Sharon,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Pleasure. Yeah,
Thanks again.
Sharon, you want to make a motion?
Sure. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Sharon,
Aye.
Amanda? Jill?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned.
Jeremy, you have 5
Thank you.
pumpkins
Thank you.
in your bank.